Your source for all things Texas Tech. This is the Ask Level podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, what's happening? Welcome into another episode of the Ask Level podcast, episode number 26. Alongside Chris Level, I'm Chois Woodman. Appreciate you joining us once again this week, and what a week it was. Pretty busy sports week overall. But a pretty good week if you're a Texas Tech fan. You got to see Patrick Mahomes win a Super Bowl. Got to see Texas Tech basketball get up off the mat and pry their way back into some relevance conversations. Mac McClung won a slam dunk competition for you. So it was a pretty exciting week, Level.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of riding the wave here lately, but yeah, it's a nice little stretch that you're on. And anytime you beat Texas in any sport, that is always fun. And you got a big win over the Longhorns this past week at home, which I don't think will be the last trip for them to Lubbock, Texas, from a basketball standpoint. I'm not sure what the other sports look like, but I do think you'll get at least one more trip from them in hoops, and it's nice to beat those guys always. That is a lot of fun, and yeah, Patrick Mahomes. I think I don't know what we would say that hasn't already been said, but best player in the league, face of the league. I mean, all those things, which is for a 27-year-old that's only been playing professional football for about 5 years. That's pretty stout. So
sure. Unfortunately,
only one way to go from here, and that's down. So hopefully that doesn't happen for a while. But I guess he's gonna have a new offensive coordinator as Eric Bieniemy is gone, but that was probably Andy Reid's baby anyway. So anyway, yeah, and baseball season underway.
That's right.
In the midst of that. So for those that are interested in that. So anyway, but yeah, and Joey's staff is under contract.
That's right.
I thought was a big deal. So Choice, I'll let you spin the old topic wheel and away we go. Right.
Okay. Well, let's start with the hottest topic, which is one of the hottest teams in the Big 12 right now, in Texas Tech basketball. Red Raiders. We're sitting here 2 weeks ago saying you're close to win out territory to have any sort of chance. And you've done close to that. Now it's still very much an uphill climb, but you have won games against 3 top 15 teams, went on the road and beat the team that's basically ahead of you. If you're going to get into the tournament, that's kind of the one you have to knock out of that conversation in West Virginia. So they're not dead. What's the meme of the I believe you're the wrestling guy, the Undertaker? Is that who it is that raises up from the dead? It feels like that's Texas Tech basketball right now. And if anything, it's just nice to see this team finally starting to click.
Yeah, yes, it is. I think they're showing some life for sure, and I think probably making some parts of the rest of the league fairly nervous, just because they are in some ways playing spoiler, and in other ways kind of trying to revive their hopes of postseason basketball. And you're right, when you're sitting there at 0-8 in the Big 12, you at that point you are saying, okay, what's the future of this program?
Right.
Is the coach safe? Is he on the hot seat? What in the world has happened? And you're still, as we sit here and chat, you're still 4-10. You're not in any way where you want to be. But I think that with the healthy team that you're putting on the floor, or healthier, you're not completely healthy, but you're as close as you've been. I think you see that now you're starting to get in kind of a rhythm, and you've kind of got some continuity, and you've got mainly some confidence, because it was you're 3-10 prior to the West Virginia game, and all 3 wins are at home. Okay, well then So the next challenge is you've got to go take this show on the road. You've got to carry that momentum and confidence to go do it in somebody else's building. and you were able to do that. Because here's the problem with whatever happens from here going forward, because you're now no longer in last place in the Big 12. I think you've given yourself a chance here to make the last couple of weeks interesting. Is that Oklahoma and West Virginia have only won one road game the entire season. Both of them have.
Yeah.
And it was the games in Lubbock, Texas. And those are the games that now what they've done with West Virginia, though, is that you've kind of nullified it a bit because you won in their place. Now this team's going to have to do the same thing in Norman, Oklahoma, in a place that hasn't exactly been the easiest for Texas Tech. But yeah, man, you've given yourself a bit of an opportunity, and it's realistic. I mean, I'm not
sure it is.
There's a lot to get done, and you're still like you're on your 8th or 9th life here for this cat that you just can't kill. That's got the 9 lives. But I mean, you've put yourself in a situation now where okay, this is attainable, but again, a lot's going to still have to happen, but this looks pretty good right now.
Yeah, a lot still has to happen, but there were conversations being had of, will this team even win another basketball game? Like there were those sorts of conversations
and they were fair.
Ago. Yes,
yeah, they were fair.
Like, where are you going to see? How could you even beat that team or this team? But now you're looking ahead, and you've got 4 regular season games left. And really, to get in a true territory where you could get in a large bid, you've got to win 3 of those. And it's plausible now, which is kind of crazy to even fathom that from where this team was just, again, a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and I'll actually disagree with that. I think I don't think. Win them all? No, I think depending on, and again, here's the unknown.
Okay.
If you win 2 of your next, 4 regular season games, you're not going to be punished for anything that happens in Lawrence, Kansas. Okay. They're a 1 seed. It's at their place. But if you win 2 of the other 3, and, which is in Norman, and then the other 2 at home versus TCU, which will be a monster game for you. And then obviously at home versus Oklahoma State. If Oklahoma State plays well enough to where their net ranking is high enough, no matter who you beat, other than Oklahoma, those are quad 1 wins. I think, again, depending on what else happens out there in the college basketball world and all those things, I think they're going to be in the conversation if they win 2 of their next 4. Now, that doesn't even factor in what needs to happen at the conference tournament, and sometimes that is more weighted than others. It's going to depend on who you end up playing with and how that data factors in and all those things. But if Oklahoma State is got the right rating on it, if you win your 2 other home games, I'm not saying that you've guaranteed yourself. You could win 3 of the next 4 and be better than what you're saying here, and it's still not be good enough. You just don't know. However, I guess to wrap it up, my point is that this is a unique year, man, and the Big 12 is heavily weighted. The data, don't believe the eyeball test, don't believe the talking heads. Just look at the numbers.
Yeah,
and the numbers would tell you that you can go 6-12 in this league. But I'm telling you, if you go 7-11 in this league, I almost would say that you've guaranteed it.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Because we've never seen that before. We haven't, but you're right. This is such an anomaly of a basketball year for everybody, but specifically the Big 12, where we've never, ever on paper seen a league this tough. But the eyeball test, it passes the eyeball test too if you watch Big 12 basketball night in and night out.
Yeah, no doubt. I think, and just so people can grasp this, you beat West Virginia over the weekend. You have the exact same overall record and the exact same conference record as the Mountaineers do. Depending on where you look, now you didn't do them any favors because you beat them.
Yeah.
But they are solidly in. I say solidly, maybe that's not necessarily fair. They are in every bracket, that you look at projection. Now they are the 10, 11, 12 range, which is, you're very much on the bubble, your last team in kind of category.
Yep.
But again, they have now the only difference there is they have a bit of a stronger non-conference schedule than you did, and you just picked a bad year one to be hurt and be young, but you also picked a bad year to play teams that in normal situations would be really, really good, like the LSUs of the world, like the Georgetowns of the world, like the Louisvilles of the world. I mean, there's so many other years where Louisville is absolutely a tournament team, or Georgetown is very, very relevant. In the last a couple of decades, LSU has been, at or near the top of the SEC standings, but this was just, they're not doing you any favors. And so that's kind of the difference there between you and West Virginia, but you can kind of eliminate a lot of that if you take care of business, because here's the thing. If you win in Norman and you win your home games, and I would tell you the toughest game of those three easily is going to be TCU at home. Okay. Make no mistake about that. I'm not even going to factor in Kansas and all that. And again, that's you can pull something off. I don't think that's likely, but anyway, it's fascinating. They've put themselves in a unique situation here, because you're right. I think a couple of weeks ago you would have thought it's crazy. It's crazy to talk like that or even suggest it, but here we are.
It is, and Mark Adams is saying in the locker room things like, "What a great story this can be." This, and it truly could. You're still not there yet, but man, the progress is unbelievable. And just one more thing on the resume part of it. Texas Tech right now, 4 quadrant 1 wins is where they sit. You look at other teams in the field, like solidly in Joe Lenardi's bracketology or those sort of things. There's plenty of those that don't have 4 quadrant 1 wins up to this point. Like your St. Mary's, Lenardi has him as a 5th seed. They've got 2 quadrant 1 wins right now. Auburn is an 8th seed. They've got 2 quadrant 1 wins. And to go along with that, Texas Tech's only got 2 losses outside of quadrant 1. The only 2 quadrant 2 through quadrant 4 losses. So everything you've lost pretty well is tough games.
I think that's actually OU and Louisville that are I think are the quad 2 losses. And I
Ohio
think
State, not Louisville.
Okay, my bad. I had the wrong Maui. No,
you're good. Yeah,
because Louisville is rock bottom. They were quad 4, I think.
And you won.
Because Oklahoma is maybe going to be in the quad 2 category because they've dropped a bit, even though it's a road game. TCU's a quad 1, Oklahoma State's a quad 1, Kansas is a quad 1. So these are the opportunities you have staring you in the face.
Still there.
And depending on who you face in Kansas City, neutral site, and all that could end up being a quad 1 or quad 2. Yeah. And again, this is what the NCAA committee looks at. We're talking all these quads and things like that. That's the way they determine and how they weight these games and try to determine, what is what. But your net ranking, which is what all this is based off of, after you beat West Virginia, it goes from the lower 60s to the mid to lower 50s after that. So you're just kind of, and again, I would say, though, if you lose in Norman, that's probably a bad loss because they are the last place team. It's not going to be easy by any means.
No.
But that's a game that I think is very winnable. There won't be but 2,000 or 3,000 people there, if that. And those are tricky. And an 8:00 tip, it's going to be a weird environment there in Norman. But it's a team that's not going to out talent you, that's for sure. And they don't have a whole lot to play for either, because I think they'd have to win the Big 12 tournament, I guess, at this point to
pretty close.
Secure. Yeah, they're in the late, higher 60s, I think, from a net ranking standpoint.
Yeah, so if they won out, their net might climb quite a bit where they get into a conversation, but that's pretty far fetched. And you mentioned net ranking for Tech. Before the Texas win, it was in the 70s. It was low 70s. So Texas Tech has risen astronomically in that category.
Beauty of playing in the Big 12 conference, because there's a lot of leagues that you're playing in simply by playing games against whoever opponent it is. It actually hurts your resume. But in the Big 12, sometimes even the losses don't necessarily hurt you because the numbers are suggesting that these Big 12 teams, they released the top 16 seeds according to the NCAA over the weekend. And I think 5 of the top 12 in the country seeded were from the Big 12 conference. That is wild. And so, when you beat a Kansas State, you beat a Texas, and then you beat a West Virginia, these are all NCAA tournament teams. So anyway, and I think you're being rewarded as such by the fact that you're in this conversation. So, and I'll tell you one thing we haven't talked about, and I'm not a super big fan of this because NIT stands for not in the tournament, but you have played your way into the situation where you could, in fact,
sure,
that could, you're getting close to where that could be the floor to where, okay, at the very minimum, you're going to be in the NIT and maybe hosting because of what you've done. You need to be over 500. And I think if you win one more game, I think that you get to the point where, okay, now you've kind of guaranteed a situation where you're going to be at least over 500 with your overall record if you were to lose the rest of them out or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll kind of see what that looks like.
Hoping that that's not but if that's the floor, would that be a conversation that that Mark Adams has with Davion Harmon and with Kevin O'Banner and those sorts to say, hey, do you want to play in this, or is this just a fool on coaches? We're doing it or we're not.
Oh, I think that is a combination. Administration, I think
true.
Coaching staff,
especially if you can host. That's a good thing.
I think your seniors. I mean, I think depends on how healthy you are at that point. Yeah, the NIT is always tricky, and I'm not suggesting. I'm just trying to introduce that as a thought process because I think because of what you've done and winning your last 5 of 7, and we haven't even really talked about the West Virginia game at all. But you get Pop Isaacs back, and you're starting to hear people say, okay, when healthy, this team looks like a NCAA tournament team. The problem was too much damage done when they weren't healthy to do anything about it, and that's kind of you're in that. That conversation right now. And
then you get into that territory. Okay, if you do enough, if you get to the 6-win mark or whatever, does the tournament committee consider that or take that into consideration that they weren't healthy for such a big chunk and now you got everybody back? It gets into those bubble conversations, and we have no idea what they think behind those closed doors.
If you've won enough, I think they possibly do consider it. If you just simply haven't, I could it break a tie? Could those arguments be made on your behalf? I don't know, but all I know is you got to have the data along with it, and they can't presume that you would have won some of these games earlier in the season if you would have been healthy. You just simply need to. But if it's between you and a couple of others, and you had the injuries, and now you're just red hot right now. Now that you're healthy, I mean, I think that so we'll see. And again, conferences don't get bids; teams do.
Right.
That you cannot say that enough at this time of year. But you're just in a league where you're going to get potentially some benefit of the doubt here because your league is just a wagon, man. I mean, that's all there is to it.
Yeah. Let's take a quick stab at a few basketball questions, and we'll move on, change topics. Jacob asks, will Tech be in the top 25 this week, or you just have too many losses after 3 straight top 15 wins over top 15 teams? Wouldn't they have to put them in?
I appreciate the optimism. No, not at all. You're not really even close to that. That is... You're a ways off from that, I think. And again, I would tell you that's not really even all that important anyway. Watch the Google NCAA net rankings. They're updated daily. That's the number you want to follow. It's updated.
What's the safe number on that? Like, what are you trying to get to? 40-ish?
I can't tell you because I don't know. The problem is it fluctuates every day based on other results, and so. The other day you beat Kansas State and you're feeling really good about that. Well, Kansas State goes to Norman and loses. And then all of a sudden your ranking actually drops and you haven't done anything.
Right.
But your win over Kansas State all of a sudden in about 48 hours doesn't look as impressive because the data keeps getting added to. I can't tell you what the safe number is. I think if you're again, I would maintain that if you have a 7-win or better record in the Big 12 Conference, 7-11, or even 6-12, depending on who those were against.
Right.
I think if other people would have done their part, I think you're going to be in the 40s. But is that good enough? I just simply can't tell you because there's so many other criteria that has yet to be played out. You just don't know what everybody else is doing.
Leah asked, what's going on with Daniel Baccio? Is it an injury or an illness or both?
Yeah, it's either foot or ankle. It's minor. I think they're just holding him out. I think he should be back at some point. It's just kind of another issue with this team, and that's just chalk that up as just one more guy that hasn't been able to be healthy and things like that.
Yep.
Because if you at some point have all of your pieces together and available, you'd like to think you've got something that could be a lot of fun and a pain in the rear end for the opposition to deal with. But is that this week versus Oklahoma, or next week, or this weekend I should say, versus TCU? I'm not real sure. But Fardaws has actually shown me more than I was expecting to this point. Because I think in some ways he had a bad game versus West Virginia, and yet he produced mightily and was a big reason why you won this game. And I say bad game because at one point, he's 0 for 9 from the field.
Yeah, he missed a ton of shots around the rim, but he made a ton for you at the free throw line.
And he rebounded. I think, I was talking to some of their people before the game started, and they were all very concerned about him, and we're suggesting, boy, he makes a huge difference.
He does.
West Virginia's really worried about him and this and that, just because he's skilled and has so much size. And he had a double, and you're right. I mean, 2 for 11 from the field, but you're 10 for 10 from the stripe. And this is the game within the game, and why you won. I mean,
absolutely.
And Jalen Tyson played well. And I thought Kevin O'Banner did not actually produce a whole lot, which is another sign that you should be really optimistic about, because you went and won on the road in this league, and he was a semi non-factor here.
Yeah, Harmon, same thing. No, I mean, he was not as good as he's been in the last few games. Didn't finish around the rim as well, turned it over too much. But again, you didn't play your best game and still won on the road. So I agree with you completely that you're moving in the right direction, and Tech is simply winning games they weren't earlier. They're finding a way to close games out. One more basketball question. Brent asks, if everyone was healthy, Level, who would be your ideal starting 5?
Yeah, I mean, I probably would, if everybody's healthy, I probably have Pop and Harmon and Jalen Tyson, O'Banner and Fardaws, I guess. But I think that you could make the argument there's some chemistry there to where it's good to have like Pop off the bench, against West Virginia was really good, because I think it infused some juice off the bench a bit. I think Kerwin Walton is somebody that has started a lot of these games, and I think it's allowed for more Pop off the bench, not literally, no pun intended there, but it has allowed some, because prime example, you were outscored 50-15 in bench points when West Virginia came to your place about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Okay. And that was, why you lost. Yeah. And I think you outscore them in this rematch 20-17, and it was because of Pop Isaac's 15 points that are largely responsible there. There's just been far too often where you just don't have any help or any offense off the bench at all. So that's the starting 5 that I would go to. But again, when completely healthy, I could see that you'd make the argument to kind of leave somebody on the bench that that you would finish the game with. How about that? Yeah. Because it's, in a lot of cases, it's who you finish with, not who you start with. And Baccio, the non-conference version of Baccio, is completely different than what we've saw in league play for a variety of reasons. But I mean, he was one of your best players, in November and early December, until he got kind of ill, and then has been dealing with a variety of different injuries.
All right, moving on to the football conversation. You mentioned earlier, it was early last week that the news comes out, but Texas Tech now has all 10 of their assistants under multi-year contracts. You give raises to both coordinators and extend contracts there. So this is good, as the salary pool increases by about $800,000 to $7.5 million. total for your salary pool, you're just in new territory in terms of the total commitment investment in your football program right now.
Yeah, well, and those are the two key words, I think, Woodman, that, commitment and investment, because that's what it takes in college sports this day and age. I think specifically when it comes to football and college hoops, these are the two revenue producing sports, and I think that in football, there's so many more changes being made very quickly and earlier in the processes that I think, because I will tell you that you had one of the members of your staff was gone after by a blue blood program just in this last week, okay, and turned it down. And I can't say that it's because of the recent contract extension that he got, but I just think that there's been multiple so one, this is a credit to Kirby and the administration for investing here, and I think two, don't lose sight on the fact that this is a credit to Joey, and that the bulk of this staff in its entirety wants to be here and working for and with this guy, because I think he makes it fun. He makes it you're going to win, at least you've done to this point. And I think he's not going to grind you down to where you're up there all hours of the night and it's just a miserable experience. So I think there's a lot to like about, and again, your football staff alone, but your strength coach, your ops people, your recruiting staff. I mean, you've got a lot under contract now that I think Joey's really trying to put his best foot forward and keep some continuity and stability together, because that's what wins, and that's what creates culture, and that's what wins in college football these days.
Do you know, I was asked this question earlier this week and I wasn't sure the answer on it. Do you know where that whole salary pool, assistant coach salary pool, lines up with those around the country elsewhere, or even elsewhere in the Big 12?
It's changing. I know it used to be near the worst in Power 5, and I think now you're nowhere near last, but I think you've really stepped up. And one part of this is your head coach isn't making as much money as others are. I think that he just got a contract extension.
Sure.
But if you look at like him compared to some of the other folks, I mean, it's maybe half.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of $6, $7, $8, $9 million football coaches out there in the country, and whether they deserve that or not, that's for other people to decide that. But obviously, who's employing them feels this way. I mean, like Lane Kiffin, for example. Lane Kiffin's making essentially twice as much as what Joey McGuire made, and Joey McGuire handed it to him. But that's life in the SEC, and that's life of, okay, we got a guy, if we lose him, what are we going to do? kind of thing.
Right.
Like where do we go? And we got to have something reputable, but all that stuff. But I can't tell you specifically on, there's that. The USA Today will always do that each year, where they really gather that info, and it doesn't include the private schools. So TCU and the Baylors of the world aren't necessarily factored in there, but you can get a pretty good idea when they release that info.
So didn't leave much time to talk about it, sorry, but the conference realignment world is ablaze again. There's all sorts of rumors floating around when we're talking about Big 12, Pac-12, even people talking of mergers and such things now. So it's a
you have media fights.
Media fights going on.
You have the Big 12 commissioner going on the two guys that are the largest mouthpieces for the Pac-12 conference, and basically kind of telling them what's up, and doing it in a very PC professional manner. I don't know what's going to happen here. I think that you are very naive if you are sitting there wherever you're listening to this and you're going, man, the Pac-12 is just fine. They're going to be just fine. I don't think that is the case. I think there's a variety of different opinions out there.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're the Big 12, I mean, Brett Yormark has told you every step of the way what his intentions are. I think he's told you flat out he wants to get into the fourth time zone, which is the West Coast or the Pacific time zone. I think he is telling you he's going to expand. It's not if or when or anything. It's a matter of fact. and it's just a matter with who and kind of the timetable there. And I just can't imagine that you've got some of these schools with some options like the Washingtons and the Oregons, because we need to start there. Everybody's focused on everybody's focused on the four corner schools.
Yeah.
That was with the assumption that Oregon and Washington were going to go to the Big Ten.
Right. And
there may not be as much interest in them in the Big Ten wanting that because of the change in commissioners.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but that's where it starts. It doesn't start with the Utahs, the Arizona schools, and certainly not Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
But because I can envision a scenario to where if you really wanted to add 4, okay, and that's where you wanted to do it, that Arizona State and Colorado would be out.
See ya. Yeah.
You're going to take Arizona, you're going to take Utah, you're going to take Oregon, you're going to take Washington. So I don't know the number you're ideally looking on. I think that's a matter of what is it worth to you with your TV contracts, what's built in and all that. But I think that he's not going to say it this way, but ultimately, I mean, we can say it this way. I think Brett Yarmark's next goal is to really destroy the Pac-12 conference. I don't think that's necessarily his intention, because I think he's going to tell you, I'm trying to do what's best for my league.
Sure.
I'm trying to make sure my league is good for well off into the future. And if this is what's best for my league and it really sucks for you guys, I hate it. But that's kind of where we are here. And the Big Ten does have some say. They can change the dynamic at any time.
Right. And that's where it just is super interesting. The Washington-Oregon conversation, it's almost a strike while the iron's hot opportunity for the Big 12, while the Big Ten is sitting there in limbo with commissioner or not having a commissioner. So I think I don't know what's going to end up happening, but I think it does not feel like there's any stability with the Pac-12 right now. You're hearing reports of half of what they were originally offered from ESPN and these sorts of things. The teams cannot feel any sort of stability themselves by staying there. So I think if the branch is extended from them, I would be surprised that if they didn't end up in another league, especially the Big 12.
It tells you all you need to know that the Pac-12 felt the need to send out a release via their conference social media accounts that they're all lockstep and they're all aligned. That's a joke, man.
Yeah. They're out there interviewing SMU.
Yeah, if that is indeed the case, you don't need to tell anybody that.
Yeah,
and it speaks to the contrary, in my opinion. So I'm not sure what PR firm or what consultant or who advised them that this would be the best thing to do to calm everybody down, because if anything, it actually makes everything that much more murkier as far as I'm concerned. And there's plenty of anonymous Pac-12 administrators or athletic officials and all that stuff that are talking anonymously that are extremely concerned.
Oh yeah.
And I know you're going to get a lot of the academic smack. You're going to get a lot of the academic talk and all that crap.
Yeah.
And I'm just telling you, man, at the end of the day, there's some of these athletic programs that want to get paid and can't afford to operate the way they have been without it. So you can take your academic smack and all that stuff and end up in a group of 5 type league. But that's what's ultimately going to end up happening if you try to be the holier than thou, with some of that stuff. So we'll see. That's for some of those school presidents and athletic directors and boosters to ultimately decide kind of what they want to do with their future.
Well, Level, it was fun this week. I like talking about wins. So whatever you've been doing the last couple of weeks, whichever stock you're putting on first, keep it going. And hopefully we can continue this trend into next week.
It's about hitting shots. It's about rebounding. It's about making free throws. It's about not turning the ball over as much. It's about being healthier. It has nothing to do with how I put on my pairs of socks there.
Well, but still, don't change it up.
I feel you.
Either way.
I feel you. I'm picking up what you're putting down, buddy. Yeah, that's right. Well, hey, man, and enjoyed it. What is this, episode
26?
26.
26.
Oh, man. Yeah, we're aging right before our eyes here.
Pretty fast.
Goodness gracious. Yes, that's right.
All right, man. We'll have a great week, and we'll do it again next week.
Okay, man. Appreciate it, Choice. Keep hope alive, everybody.
That's Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. You've been tuned in to the Ask Level podcast, brought to you by Double T 97.3.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.